Comrades and friends, this is a very exciting period for revolutionaries around the world. The working class and oppressed are waking up in response to the current crisis of capitalism. So many activists and revolutionaries are not waiting for the outcome of these bourgeois elections to continue the struggle here and worldwide. And I just want to raise two incredible, exciting developments that just happened last night and today, and led by our immigrant sisters and brothers. In Costa Mesa, California, which is in reality part of stolen Mexico, young immigrants confronted racists and the police at a Trump rally. These brave activists, some of whom were carrying signs that stated, "Build a wall around Trump," blocked the highway leading to this racist rally and destroyed a police vehicle in the process. 20 people were arrested, and you can bet probably the majority of them, if not all of them, were anti-Trump demonstrators. And then today in Burlingame, California, the same thing happened when Trump he appeared at the California Republican Convention. And again, immigrant workers and youth, really confronted Trump. He was forced to go on another entrance, climb over a fence or whatever. Comrades know more than I do about it. Just found out about it. And it was just an incredible, display of militancy and hatred against Trump and all that he stands for. So hopefully other comrades and friends can talk more about this. This is really, for our party, a heroic act in keeping in the tradition of commemorating May Day, International Workers' Day. For it was immigrant workers from Europe who ushered in May Day back in the late 1880s with nationwide work stoppages in the U.S. demanding the right to an 8-hour day. And of course, just 10 years ago, there was the May Day one-day strike carried out by millions of immigrants fighting for the right to legalization, which defeated the hated Sensenbrenner bill. This event, along with the other shutdown actions against Trump, along with strikes against austerity from Chicago to the current Verizon strike to the occupations in Europe, are encouraging signs acknowledging that young people especially see no future in capitalism. And in this country, there is the Sanders phenomenon. Of course, we can't support Sanders because he is an imperialist, not a socialist. In terms of his foreign policy, Sanders supports Israel's right to exist, though he has said some, things sympathetic to the Palestinians. He also came out in support of the bombing of Yugoslavia in the late 1990s. He has attacked the Cuban Socialist Revolution by attacking its leadership. And he recently stated his support for the drone attacks. That's just to name a few. Sanders is only for making cosmetic changes to the Democratic Party, which, like the Republican Party, represents capitalism, instead of leading people away in an independent, revolutionary direction, which a number of Sanders supporters are hoping that he will eventually do, but we see no, signs of that happening. But you never know. But the main question is, what does it tell us that millions of people, primarily young people, are supporting someone who says that they are a socialist and someone who agitates against Wall Street and the 1%? As a party, we view this as a remarkable progressive step forward for this country, which has maintained its position as the #1 imperialist country based on a steady diet of virulent anti-communism to maintain class rule for decades. In terms of domestic policy, at best, Sanders models himself as a modern-day version of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, whose administration passed the New Deal during the 1930s to save capitalism from the potential of a socialist revolution. Roosevelt had to convince the ruling class that the only way to stave off a social revolution was to create reform, such as a massive jobs program in the form of WPA, along with a social safety net in the form of Social Security and unemployment benefits. The New Deal did not usher in socialism, but they were capitalist reforms where some capitalist prosperity trickled down to the jobless and hungry masses who were becoming more and more desperate due to their dire situation. Bernie Sanders seeks to carry out his own New Deal with similar social programs like calling for free education in state colleges by regulating the profits of Wall Street and big business through taxation and by other means. While his anti-Wall Street, pro-middle class rhetoric is striking a nerve with young people versus his pro-war, pro-Wall Street opponent, Hillary Clinton, his program falls way short of getting rid of the entire system, root and branch. The laws that govern capitalism can never go back to the days of FDR. And even though we are for reforms, if they help to relieve some of the pain and suffering for our class, the reality is that any reforms are temporary bandages for the much larger scourge of capitalism. The recent Panama Papers, so-called, scandal is a perfect example of showing that the offshore accounts of billionaires and their corporations to escape, taxes in the billions of dollars, which is really the stolen wages or unpaid wages of workers, is an indictment, one of many indictments of the capitalist system. Individual capitalists are driven to make and save profits by the system. No amount of legal regulations that Sanders is projecting will eradicate widespread inherent corruption and massive wage theft. The recognition of the struggle against racism and white supremacy has been a big weakness for the Sanders campaign, a weakness that has been taken note by even some of his supporters. An article that appeared in Counterpunch called "Why Sanders Can't Win the Support of People of Color," written by a Sanders supporter, Alfredo Lopez, who is Latino, states that Sanders probably lost his chance for the Democratic Party nomination due to this weakness, especially where Black people are concerned. He cites 4 areas, especially, that Sanders did not give proper attention to, including Black Lives Matter, the demand for reparations, the resegregation, and crumbling urban centers. And to a lesser degree, he states that Sanders raises immigration in a sort of half-hearted way. And whether we agree with all of the points in this article or not, it proves once again that the acid test for any leftists and activists here, regardless of nationality, is to understand and take with the utmost seriousness the significance of the national question upon which white supremacy is based. This understanding is not only a major pillar of our election campaign program, but has distinguished Workers' World Party from many on the left for the past 57 years. The difficulty Sanders has had in winning Black people over to his program, is a good lesson for the left. We know he's talking about racism and the criminal justice system, but initially he downplayed the police war against people of color. He even came out against reparations for Black people, calling the demand, quote unquote, divisive, as if he were speaking on behalf of whites. Our party says that defending the right to reparations is an expression of anti-racist class solidarity, for long denied justice for the descendants of former slaves, which can help build a bridge to strengthening solidarity within our class. It is one political expression of the right to self-determination for all oppressed peoples. A few weeks ago, the New York Times printed a horrific expose on Jesuit priests who sold over 270 slaves to a Maryland plantation in the late 1700s to pay off the debt of the now prestigious Georgetown University. Since that time, the school has erased the names of these priests off of some of its buildings. And now the issue of reparations has been raised by some of these descendants of these 270 slaves, which the accrued interest amounts in the trillions of dollars for a slave economy that benefited both the South and the North. Sisters and brothers, the lesson is that you cannot be a leader of a left-wing development without making what we Marxists call the national question, or the struggle against racism, national oppression, and white supremacy central to your program. With so much at stake, with the U.S. being the most powerful imperialist country and the ruling class's obsession to keep a large multinational working class divided and subjugated, the struggle against national oppression and white supremacy is the central question really to the class struggle in the United States. And Sanders' first instinct was to marginalize the issue of racism. And again, this is a mistake many on the left have made and continue to make, and they are weaker for it, and our movement is weaker for it. And this is why this struggle against white supremacy is synonymous to the class struggle. I can't repeat that enough, especially inside the U.S. It is why there was a conscious political decision made by our party to make the issue of reparations our very first demand of our 10-point program, followed by the right to self-determination of all oppressed nationalities brutalized by imperialism. Comrades and friends, there are dangers for our class, but opportunities as well. The Trump campaign, which is based on racism and a neo-fascistic appeal to angry white workers, is a serious danger. But this danger, as we can see what happened in California and what's going to continue to happen, is evoking resistance by black and brown activists and anti-racist white allies, disrupting Trump events and shutting them down. They are showing us all how you fight a racist threat. You don't stop racism by voting for the Democrats. You do it by shutting racism down by any means necessary to show that white supremacy has no right to free speech. And also, Ted Cruz, who is no better than Trump, was recently disrupted, I think it was Rebel Diaz, and some Latino activists in the Bronx, New York. Black Lives Matter is a working class struggle. Why? Because the intensification of racist police killings and mass incarceration is in large part a consequence of the global capitalist economic crisis. High-tech globalized capital has no jobs, and therefore it has no use for young black people to become productive. So the attitude of the corporate bosses is to put them in jail or kill them. And this is why we say stop the genocidal war against black youth along with brown and indigenous youth. The fact that there's both an awakening on the left and on the right shouldn't surprise us. It is a response to this unprecedented global capitalist crisis that only promises to get worse, especially after the elections. It creates dangers, but also clearly it creates opportunities for growth for the revolutionary movement. And I think, as these demonstrations and as this resistance continues to grow and deepen and intensify, I think the revolutionary left has no other choice but try to come together and unite and figure out a way to respond, to this crisis. And I'm sure Comrade Larry will talk more about that. But for those of us who consider ourselves revolutionary, anti-imperialist socialists, we must pay better attention to these developments. They should be a warning, a very good warning to us that it's time to work hard to strengthen the revolutionary anti-imperialist section of the left. I think this will become all the more necessary after the Democratic Party establishment prevails over Sanders by giving the nomination to Hillary Clinton and then absorbing him. And again, some Sanders supporters, and we saw this at this Riverside Church event and also at a Peace and Freedom Party event that John Parker and I spoke a few weeks ago. A lot of Sanders supporters are really urging him to try to break with the Democratic Party and run as an independent. But of course, again, there's no signs at this juncture that he would take this, this path. But a lot of Sanders supporters are going to be furious once, he does lose the nomination. And it's up to us as the class-conscious left to have a strategy for winning over the best of those, the most militant of those who are backing Sanders, over to a genuine revolutionary socialist orientation. We need to put away any past differences and come together to plan the strategy that will make such a thing possible. And again, a number of the people who were at the demonstrations last night and today were Sanders supporters, including a number of women who were also there in solidarity with immigrant workers. One of the messages of our campaign to true socialist revolutionaries is to struggle for a new level of unity, free of sectarianism, free of small-minded behavior, so that we can prepare for the revolutionary period that we are entering. We have more in common than we think. The masses are moving left at a speed that most of us don't even realize. Imagine what will happen when there is another crash of the global capitalist financial system like the one in 2007, 2008. Such an occurrence is inevitable, and it will drive the masses towards revolution on a scale that we can't even imagine. Just imagine if Trump actually gets the nomination. Not even the November, not even the elections. So we just have to be really ready, comrades, in terms of, and be prepared for what may happen. For those who want to vote for the Moorehead Lilly campaign, we are seeking ballot status in several states, along with investigating write-in campaigns and online petitions on social media. But really, the ultimate goal of our election campaign is to reach as many people in the movement with a clear message that it's time for revolutionaries to wake up, shake off any negative past habits, be open to new strategies and tactics, and get ready to do what we were born to do, to help give birth to a revolutionary mass uprising, because while the elections will come and go, the crisis will not go away, and neither will the class struggle. And again, May Day is a great opportunity to get the word out about this on Sunday. Hope to see you there, and get the word out about our election campaign and all of the other different struggles, because we plan to be there to demand solidarity with Black Lives Matter, to demand no deportations, no raids on immigrants, no apartheid wall, and for full legalizations for immigrants, to say that there can be no revolutionary socialism without abolishing capitalism, along with other demands to expose capitalist crimes against humanity. Long live international solidarity, long live May Day. Thank you. Also, I just wanted to say a little bit more about the Riverside Church event, which is very interesting because, you had Socialist Party, Socialist Action, the Labor for Bernie, Socialist Alternative, the Green Party, PSL, Jeff Mackler. And, Eugene Debs' name came up a number of times. Yes, a number of times. In terms of, he's, member of the Socialist Party who was in prison. Was he in prison for protesting the war? Yes, right. And he got 1 million votes and so forth. And so, and people evoked his name in terms of, here's somebody who was in prison who, a million votes came in for him and so forth. But what was missing from it in terms of the national question was what was also going on at the same time, which was the Marcus Garvey movement, which was under tremendous attack at that time. And of course, there was the fact that, the socialist movement at that time, which was very much involved in, different struggles and the class struggle against the war and imperialist war and so forth. But, disregarded what was going on with the Marcus Garvey, Back to Africa movement, which came under tremendous racist attack, by, the ruling class at that time, and as a result faced a lot of isolation and alienation and so forth because of the erroneous view of the left in terms of, disregarding the national question. So I just wanted to raise that because that was sort of missing from this, from this discussion. It's okay, but it's just something to take note of. In terms of the Sanders movement, the Sanders phenomenon, it's important for us to distinguish between Sanders, the individual, and the people who are supporting him. It really is. And again, Sanders is trying to rejuvenate the Democratic Party, as Sarah was saying, bringing in more forces and so forth, and, trying to bring some type of reform within the Democratic Party. And the fact that you have different forces, and it's not a monolithic movement. It really isn't. You have people who came out of the Occupy Wall Street movement, those who are dissatisfied with Obama. It's all types of forces within within this movement, and it's not a monolithic movement. And he just laid off a whole bunch of campaign workers, because he wanted to, I think, concentrate on California. Where are they at? Where are they at this particular time? We have to monitor that situation as well. But it's true that we need to engage, these Sanders supporters. We need to engage them. We need to talk to them, see where they're at politically, see why they, support Sanders. When John and I were on the West Coast, speaking on the West Coast, we had 1 or 2 Sanders supporters that would walk into our, party meeting. They had either the T-shirts or the buttons on, or they came to the Peace and Freedom debate that included, Gloria LaRiva and this other person who is also seeking the Peace and Freedom nomination. They didn't say much, but they were there, listening. They were also at the Riverside Church event, and they heard various views about the Sanders movement. Some were saying, we just need to disregard the Sanders movement, as if, putting an equal sign between Sanders and the movement, that they're not going to go anywhere, so just forget about them. And that's not our view at all. Our view is to engage them, see who we can win over to a more revolutionary perspective, and so that's our view of the Sanders phenomenon, because we know that it's going to come and go in terms of the elections, but after the elections, it's very, very important, in terms of where these forces going, their morale, and so anyway, I just wanted to raise that we don't want to abandon the Sanders, movement, because we do see the difference between him as an individual and the movement and the campaign itself. So that's very, very important for us to have an objective view of this. And a lot of the comrades around the country are doing just that, whether in Durham or here or elsewhere around the country. We are engaging these forces talking to them, making sure that, and it's important to listen to them. That's one great thing about this campaign, listening to what people have to say, because it is a new day. It really is a new day in terms of, this reopening of socialist ideas and curiosity about what socialism really is. What's the difference between democratic socialism, as he's been projecting, Sanders, and what we mean by revolutionary socialism. So I just wanted to raise that. And then the last thing is that it's very, very important for us to repeat time and time again that the Black Lives Matter movement is a working class movement, just as the immigrant rights movement is a working class movement. See, this is there's one thing that we've been, seeing in terms of the PPA and other, situations, is that there's sort of a schism or a lack of understanding of the national question and all of its complexities, its historical differences, because there are historical differences when it comes to Black people, in terms of Latino people, Asian people, Indigenous people. We can't forget Indigenous people either, because they're getting killed by the police too. And there is I think a lack of awareness of that, which we need to bring to the fore. But anyway, we need to reiterate the need that both the Black question and the brown question are so integral to building class unity within our class. We have to, in the most sensitive and persuasive way, make those points, because this is something the ruling class, and we see what Trump is doing in terms of attacking immigrants with this apartheid wall and so forth. He's not really doing that with the Black question. I mean, that could all change. I mean, of course, we all know how he feels about oppressed people in general, but he is really using the issue of this apartheid wall and an attack on this racist attack on immigrant workers as a wedge, trying to drive a wedge within our class. And this is something that we have to, continue to fight, but also to project more and more class solidarity. What Amani raised too about the whole, issue of immigrants. Who are the immigrants? In terms of course, Latino immigrants are sort of, more and more, the more visible in terms of the migrant struggle. But, there's immigrants from the Caribbean, from Africa, from South America. You see what they're doing in terms of driving a wedge between Dominican workers and Haitian workers. That's because of imperialism. That's because of imperialism. And this is exactly, the ruling class sees this as a weakness. And so we have to help forge that solidarity as much as we can, not only with our election campaign, but, with our revolutionary politics in general. And